welcome to those who are joining us online via the various social media platforms, PBCJ live stream, and those who are in the gallery. Call of the roll.
Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Dr. Tufton, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Vaz, Mrs. Mallow Fort, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Main, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terry Long, Dr. Dunn, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Witter, Ms. Smith, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Charles, members of this Honorable House, I received the following letter from Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert. Dear Ms. Curtis, this is to formally advise the House of Representatives that I have resigned as Speaker and member of the House of Representatives with effect from the date of this letter. And the date of the letter is September 21, 2023. We will now proceed to elect a Speaker of this Honorable House. Members present, I call upon you to elect from among you one not being a minister or parliamentary secretary to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Madam Clerk, May I say, before I nominate, this House would like to extend its thanks and appreciation to the outgoing Speaker, the Member of Parliament for South Trelawney, and we wish her well, but do express our appreciation for the sterling work she contributed as Speaker of the House. Madam Clerk, I beg to nominate the Member of Parliament for the great constituency of East Rural St. Andrew, Mrs. Juliet Holness, to become the Speaker of the House.
Ms. Clark, Ms. Curtis.
Madam Clerk, I beg to second the motion.
Mrs. Juliet Holness has been nominated and seconded. No. No. Wait. No. The Honorable Juliet Anne-Marie Holness has been nominated and seconded. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? There be no other nominations. I have the honor of declaring the Honorable Juliet Anne-Marie Holness Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Madam Speaker, welcome to the chair. I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to congratulate you, firstly, to make yourself available to be the Speaker of this Honorable House, and to thank the members who have all supported you in you becoming Speaker of the House. I can say, Madam Speaker, someone that I have known for over 2 decades, I have absolutely no doubt that your competence, your skill, your intelligence will ensure that this Parliament is conducted in an orderly and in a way that the Jamaican people can be proud. I have no doubt that your management of this Parliament, as demonstrated when you were Deputy Speaker and also as Chairman of Committee, will ensure that meetings are conducted without fear or favor, without bias, and also to give the opportunity for all the members to participate and to make their voices heard. Madam Speaker, I wish you well, and I have no doubt that your stint as Speaker will be a sterling one.
Madam Speaker, I join with my colleague in congratulating you on the ascension to the chair of Speaker of this great House. In congratulating you, Madam Speaker, I wish, as I did before the start of the meeting, to say that early in your tenure, it is my hope that both leader of government business and myself will be able to sit with you to look at some of the issues that we have had to deal with in the past and to see how we can share in our collective wisdom, in the guidance that you will need from time to time from those of us in this chamber. We wish you well. We genuinely want you to do well so that your tenure can be very successful. Madam Speaker, I would not resume my seat without thanking colleagues, all the colleagues in this House who have reached out to me. In fact, not only the colleagues in the House, but staff members, indeed all of Jamaica, who have reached out to me over the last 2 weeks as I go through my own personal trial, and to really say, despite the fact that we are nowhere closer today than we were 2 weeks ago at finding my daughter, and her mother, but I do feel the prayers, and it's prayers from hundreds and hundreds of Jamaicans who have reached out. And, in these times, sometimes your own faith can be weakened, but I can assure you, Madam Speaker, and indeed this nation, my faith is stronger today than it has been. I want to thank the police for their work that they're doing, and to urge everybody to continue to pray so that they will be returned safely. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Juliet Holness being elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. It creates a vacancy, and now I will invite Madam Speaker to help to choose a deputy.
I now call upon the members to elect one from among you, not being a minister or parliamentary secretary, to be the deputy speaker.
Speaker, I now nominate the Member of Parliament for the great constituency of St. James Central, Heroy Clark, to be the Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
Mr. Heroy Clark has been nominated and seconded. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? There be no other nominations. I have the honor of declaring Mr. Heroy Clark Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to thank you for the confidence that has been reposed in me to handle the very difficult job of being the Speaker of this Parliament. I accept my responsibility with great humility, and I will always endeavor to ensure that I manage with equity, judiciously balanced, and always in keeping with the standing orders of this noble House. Members, it is the beginning of excellent camaraderie. When a member from the opposition side stands up to second the nomination of the member from the government side for Speaker or Deputy Speaker. And I hope as we continue to do our duties on behalf of the people of Jamaica, we will continue to display that type of relationship that keeps our house disciplined and orderly in the benefit of all the people of Jamaica. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm ready to move.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is indeed my pleasure. The pleasure is mine to accept from my colleagues the position of being Deputy Speaker of this noble House. And I too affirm that I will work diligently along with my colleagues on both sides to make sure that discipline and order continue to be in this House, as so we followed the standing orders. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, it would be remiss of me not to thank my predecessor, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert. I have learned so much because of her leadership. And I must say, even having resigned, our former speaker spent every day ensuring that I was fully prepared to take up the mantle on her departure. It is a pleasure to find individuals who love Jamaica and the work of the Parliament to the extent that whatever is happening, the people of Jamaica come first. Former Speaker, I personally thank you for your service, and I am expecting that you will be there along with other former speakers, both here in the House and those who are in retirement, to continue to guide my hand. Thank you, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert. Statement by ministers. My apology, I see a hand around there.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me too add my bit of congratulations to yourself being elevated to the lofty position as Speaker of this Honorable House, and to your deputy, Mr. Heroy Clark. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So let me offer my congratulations to both. But Madam Speaker, I could not sit here and not say a word or two about Mrs. Marissa Dalrymple Philibert in her role as a Member of Parliament for a very rural constituency of Southern Trelawney, and the excellent service that she gave to her constituents and indeed to the people of Jamaica. She is from a family that traditionally has extended not only their hands but their home. As a trained lawyer, many times she had to represent persons without being paid, and that did not deter her from continuing her strive and her work to ensure that justice was not only done, but also appeared to be done. I am aware, because I chair an organization that she's still a member of, that the people of Southern Trelawney are going through what you would call withdrawal syndrome, because they love their Mama D, and she loved them equally. Indeed, a lot of the development infrastructurally, personally, and community-wise, she has been there with them over the last 20 years. I know she has unfinished business in the constituency, but I am confident that those who hold the positions to ensure that the Troy Bridge is completed, because this is one of the issues she has left undone. We wish her well. We have all learned from her, and as a rural member of parliament, she has offered guidance to me to treat with the issues of rural Jamaica. And a lot of persons are not sensitive to these issues. Mrs. Dalrymple Filbert was a stalwart. She stood head and shoulders.
Hold a moment, please, member. I was hoping that we would have spent the time to do some detailed tributes on behalf of our former speaker. And I am making sure that we commence operating our procedures in this parliament in such a way that no one from either side carry out a debate or abuse the proceedings. So if given the latitude, one would expect that you would be brief, and the intent is that all of us in the House do our full tributes, because it could never be that a small thank you is what we have for our former speaker. So I am going to allow you 1 minute to wrap up out of respect, and I am asking you to do so, member, wrap up.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. But now that I've finished my opening remarks,
this is why I switched to Shopify. Shopify made it really easy for me to shift everything over and hit the ground running. I was easily able to migrate my products and all of my customer information over. We would not be able to go on the road without a platform that we can rely on. Start your free trial with Shopify today.
Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: annual report on audited financial statements of the National Irrigation Commission Limited for the period 2020-2021. Ministry paper number 85 of 2023, entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the National Irrigation Commission Limited for the year ended March 31, 2021. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica for the financial year 2021-2022. Annual report of the Jamaica Tourist Board for the financial year 2021-2022. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica for the financial years 2012 to 2013, 2013 to 2014, 2014 to 2015, and 2015 to 2016. Annual report on audited financial statements of the SCJ Holding Limited for the period 2017-2018. Ministry paper number 86 of 2023, entitled Annual Report of the SCJ Holdings Limited for the year ended March 31, 2018. And the third, supplementary estimates for the financial year 2023-2024.
There may be a recommittal of announcement. We are just verifying the date for the receipt of one of our Auditor General's report so that I can determine if it is to be tabled today. Member Robinson.
Speaker, you may have preempted me. There are two issues that carry over from your predecessor. One relates to the Attorney General's opinion on the tabling of both the Integrity Commission and the Auditor General reports. And I'm asking if the opinion can be shared with the Parliament. And secondly, I was going to ask you about the Yes, and I was going to ask you about the third Auditor General's report, which was sent to the House but not tabled, and when that report would be tabled.
Member Robinson, as I have just taken the Speaker's chair, I will endeavor to respond to you on at the next sitting, Tuesday coming. I have seen at least one report. I've asked the clerk to verify the date received. And just for the benefit of the House, it is a discussion that has been ongoing. My intention is to also have a discussion with the Auditor General so that we have the clarity in terms of when the report is actually filed with the ministry. Once I do so, I will indicate what my suggestion is to her. My express view is that we find a way to ensure we know that the report is tabled at the ministry itself, because ministers continue to indicate that for public bodies, they are not aware of some of the audits executed. There is one particular special audit that has been sitting in the Speaker's office. It is one for Transport Authority. It's a special audit, and I'm just trying to verify the date. So before Parliament is concluded, that is why I indicated I would ask for a recommittal, because I'm just doing a verification, and then we would move forward with the process. In respect of your other questions, if you do not mind, I would appreciate the time to just pull the records again and come back to you with a response. I am not of the mind to change any of the rulings of the Speaker at this time, as would have been done for all speakers. Yes, I take my responsibility as Speaker going forward, and the rulings and determination that we had prior and the standing order that we had prior is what will continue to pertain, but I will be doing my own review. So, Member Robinson, until next Tuesday. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask that these matters, a number of matters from the Minister of Finance should be dealt with, but can I ask that we move on until he is in the House so we can recommit? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
In respect of the Minister of Finance, we would have also received an update. We, as indicated by House Leader, will continue, and if necessary, may have to take a recess. Yes, we will do a double check. Questions and answers to questions?
Madam Speaker, I have a set of questions which would have been tabled in March of this year. I have colleagues on this side who have tabled questions before me. Those questions are months outstanding. I'd gotten assurances from the House Leader, not the one sitting, but the substantive House Leader, that those questions would have been answered before we went on summer recess. We are now in September, and there's no indication as to when those questions are going to be answered. A part of the role of the Parliament is to hold the executive accountable. And it means that when questions are asked to ministers, they should answer within the 21-day period. It cannot be that, as almost a normal course, we have questions that are unanswered months after the due date. There's no indication as to when these questions are going to be answered, and we just continue as if it's normal. I would urge you, as one of your responsibilities, to please hold the ministers to account to answer the questions that are tabled in their names.
Madam Speaker, sorry for the inconvenience, but can I ask for a recommittal of notices of motions given orally? Madam Speaker, apparently the bill nor the third supplementary is not here as yet, so kind of continue with the agenda.
Member from St. Andrew Southeastern, Member Robinson, in respect of the statement you made, questions and answers to questions, I ensure that I appraise myself of the rules in that regard, and the members of the executive will also have pressure from the Speaker through the House Leader to ensure that our questions and answers to questions follow the requisite rule. There is the provision for extension and there is the provision for discretion. It will be among the discussions had with the leader of the government and the opposition leader of business. Thank you. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, there will be two main items this afternoon. It is the debate and completion of an act to amend the law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, which will be taken by the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, and then thereafter the second supplementary budget will also be tabled. Madam
You design the color, right? For the red is gold.
Ready to
Honorable
go.
Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security. Would you be so kind as to provide the stand for this paperwork?
That's better.
Thank you. Thank you, Orderly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I begin to make my presentation, is not only express my appreciation to the outgoing speaker, to work with her, but I consider it, as I say, it's a good omen that I move the first bill that you'll preside over in passing. Madam Speaker, you'll recall that it was in September 2017, the first zone of special operation, ZOZO, was declared in the community of Mount Salem. At that time, the Mount Salem community met all the required criteria and demonstrated the requirement for increased security and definite investment in the social and services and infrastructure of that community. Madam Speaker, prior to the establishment of the zone of special operation in Mount Salem, a community in which I have special attachment, I lived there once. The community had been plagued with intense gang-related violence and criminal activities among several gangs operating from the communities within the St. James Police Division. Today, Madam Speaker, having had benefited from the sustained security, social, infrastructural investment within the area, Mount Salem is beginning to show the signs of positive transformation. In addition to Mount Salem, 6 other communities which met the eligibility criteria have been declared zones of special operations: Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Horrid Gardens, and section of Savannah Mar. They're active, and the residents of these communities are experiencing significant transformative activities within these areas. Madam Speaker, this government understands and is committed to improving the lives and the life of outcome of the people in our vulnerable and volatile communities. It's for this reason that in December 2020, we convened the Joint Select Committee to consider and report on the zones of special operations and do whatever necessary amendment would find practical and useful to make it even more effective. In fact, in these significant instances, Madam Speaker, it's a piece of legislation that enjoys the support of the entire House and the entire community of Jamaica. To the far-reaching piece of legislation to seek to bring about significant improvement in a number of challenged communities. The Joint Select Committee mechanism we undertook, through the Joint Select Committee mechanism, we undertook a comprehensive stakeholder-informed review of the legislation. The report of which was tabled in Parliament in January 2022. The work of the Joint Select Committee enabled us to design a more robust and relevant bill as responsive to our current social, cultural, and economic dynamics of those who reside in these volatile communities. Madam Speaker, it took a bit longer than we had hoped to finalize the bill. It was a good bill. There was no fundamental change, but there were some 17 amendments we'll go through in detail further on, and it had the support of the entire committee. But in fact, we went through in great detail over time. The legal and technical teams worked tirelessly despite of the time. I think we have to examine the capacity of our technical team dealing with these various issues at the legislative level. But the bill was tabled just last week in the House. I want to acknowledge the work of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Legal Reform Department, the Ministry of Justice, the team of the Attorney General Department, for their invaluable support and their collaborative efforts that have yielded significant returns in the form of this bill. I wish also to place on record in my commendation of the policy and legal teams from the Ministry of National Security, the units from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Jamaica Defense Force, who, though small in numbers, are an effective team of professionals who did the heavy lifting in bringing this bill to the Parliament. I want to thank the stakeholders who made submissions to the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, Madam Speaker. I refer to the Ministry of Justice, Jamaica Police Federation,
Jamaica Social Investment Fund, Peace Management Initiative Western, the City Security Secretariat, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Office of Public Defender, Violence Prevention Alliance, UWI Mona Law School, and the United Nations Development Program. My sincere gratitude to the technical team of the House of Representatives, along with the Jamaica Printing Service. It is the continued commitment and dedicated service of these stakeholders which has led to the advancement of this legislation. Madam Speaker, the lower forms one of special operations, special security, and community development measures act were designed with a view to facilitate social transformation, community development measures that are essential for public order and maintaining the rule of law. This, Madam Speaker, was to be accomplished and is being accomplished through a clear hold and build strategy. Madam Speaker, all 7 zones continue to advance along the clear hold and build path, with the Mount Salem division being at the most advanced stage of the build phase. Though they are at different stages, the people experience with immediacy the transformative effect of their community and the restoration of hope that comes with those. Before I go clause by clause, Madam Speaker, may I express my gratitude to and appreciation to the members of the Joint Select Committee on both sides of the House. I think it's a committee that could be considered a model for cooperation and collaboration. We work together, and although there are 17 small but very significant amendments, the discussion throughout the Joint Select Committee was collegial and productive and gave direction for the development of this particular piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation that enjoys the full support of the entire House and the entire country. It is indeed a far-reaching piece of legislation designed to take the work of government into a number of communities that are constantly challenged and volatile in a more positive way, and I'm confident we'll bring out the kind of results we wish. We have 7 zones. 3 are in the build phase, the other 4 are still in the hold phase, and I know that the Jamaica Social Investment Fund is looking at the required budget to expand that build phase to other areas, but not only into the other 4 zones, but based on the long-standing socioeconomic survey by the Planning Institute of Jamaica and the continued review and by the continued monitoring by the police, Jamaica Constitutional Force of the violence data and other factors that affect the social environment in many communities, and having a good knowledge of the physical infrastructure of our challenged communities, we intend that it should be expanded to a number of areas across Jamaica. I think that the expansion is anxiously awaited by many of our members of parliament who have such communities. The ministry is, in fact, undertaking to initiate some of the activities, even where we have not declared zones, because we have identified through the work in the zones and by one review of past performances that we can introduce programs through the various MDAs, the government, into communities that have challenged by activities that we consider fit the spectrum of zones, but may not yet reach that level in terms of the level of violence, but we have to start the work of the social transformation that is required in those communities. We already have, there is an ongoing program, just literally just started, one funded by one partner to look, it's an interministerial collaborative effort with the Ministry of Education, working through some 35 schools to engage these 35 communities and begin that process, not only in ensuring the schools in collaboration, the ministry will be taken to a level that is acceptable to provide quality education, but will interface through the school with the parents and the wider community in dealing with some fundamental challenges in those communities. So, Madam Speaker, the bill proposes to amend 17th section of the Act and to create one new subsection. Madam Speaker, members, I will now take the House through a clause by clause on this bill. It won't be long as there were no major fundamental change, rather, but the changes were designed to make it a better bill. And I think we have successfully concluded that. In respect of clause 2, Madam Speaker, maybe one of them, a single word, but a very important amendment. The bill proposes the renaming of the Social Intervention Committee as the Social Transformation Committee, which is to seek give direction in the very title of what we're intending to achieve in this particular activity. This amendment is being proposed, Madam Speaker, further to the recommendation of the Joint Select Committee, and the base that the utilization of the term transformation better reflects the nature and ultimate objective of the efforts of the committee and the intent of the law. Additionally, it is proposed that the membership of the Social Intervention Committee be expanded to include a representative of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, as well as a member of the Joint Force who is trained in sensitivity to matters relating to gender-based violence. The bill further proposes in clause 3 the introduction of more inclusionary language in the recognition of the protection of the fundamental rights and the freedom of a person residing, working, doing business, and raising families in the zone. It also specifically highlights the need to redirect young persons out of criminal activity as a further object for the legislation, which supports the ministry's policy focus and redirection or diversion of vulnerable persons from criminal activity. The bill further proposes in clause 4 to increase the initial period in which a zone is declared to be enforced from a period not exceeding 60 days to a period not exceeding 180 days. This time, Madam Speaker, is being introduced to reflect the nature of the zones of special operations as a piece of legislation, while it is designed to improve good order, security, public order, and public safety. The ultimate objective of the bill is to get to the build phase where we set a development program based in an atmosphere of peace and safety that will effect transformation in the community. We need time to do that, and one way to do it is considered by virtue of the experience of the members of the House who have zones that is a more appropriate level to continue to implement this particular piece of legislation. So this, Madam Speaker, allows more time for the social intervention objectives to be realized and provide a more sustainable environment for the maintenance of law and order. In the first 180 days, which is the clear and beginning of the whole, much of some of the soft intervention can begin. Take a little while longer to get to the longer term. Bills also seeks to amend the circumstances under which a zone can be declared in Section 4 to reflect two distinctive categories, namely, as originally designed, rampant criminality or gang warfare, or high or escalating rate of violence, as well as the threat to the rule of law and public order. Additionally, members, the bill also proposes in clause 5 the further qualified authority with whom the Prime Minister and Council will be required to consult before a zone can be extended, as well as to increase the period of extension. Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the members of this House that among the proposals received in the last round of consultation was to further increase the period of extension, as agreed by by the Joint Select Committee, from 120 days to 180 days. Madam Speaker, the government having had the benefit of observing the implementation of 7 zones of special operations, also deemed it practical to standardize and align the duration of the extension with initial period of declaration, thereby maximizing the time available for the Social Transformation Committee while balancing the need for prioritizing the safety of the citizens through the continued presence and efforts of law enforcement in their community. The bill also seeks, Madam Speaker, in clause 6, to expand the category of persons who may be required to make a statement to Parliament following the declaration of a zone to include the Minister with responsibility for national security. The bill further proposes in clause 9 to increase the time period required for the Joint Command through the Commissioner of Police or the Chief of Defence Staff to report to National Security Council from every 10 days to every 30 days, and in clause 10 to expand the circumstance under which the Prime Minister in Council may suspend the operation of the zone where it is considered necessary to do so. Pause again, Madam Speaker, indicate this 30-day report allows the Minister or the Prime Minister to answer urgent questions to members in the House who may have questions relating to the conduct of the zones of special operation. While the standardized report should be at 180 days, there is the facility to be able to respond appropriately and maintain the kind of vigilance that we want in implementing this particular program. So the member of parliament or the member of the House who have a concern with the quality of the execution, whether in terms of security or in terms of the implementation in the bill phase, they may ask those questions and not to wait the 180 days and get an appropriate and the correct answer. It is also being proposed in clause 11, Madam Speaker, that the determination of the identity of the members of the joint force be vested alternatively in the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Staff. Madam Speaker, the bill further proposes in clause 12 to vest the authority to impose a curfew in the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defense Staff or their designates not below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police and Lieutenant Colonel, respectively. It also proposed to introduce the requirement for a notice to be displayed upon the establishment of a coordinate and imposition of a curfew to enable persons within the zone to be made aware of those activities. That to be at easy, accessible points within the community that all community members are aware are not taken by surprise by the imposition or the start of a curfew or a cordon search. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the clause further proposed to facilitate the expansion of the vantage points at which the notice ought to be established to include such areas outside of the zones, such as a post office or any other near community facility. This will facilitate the notification of individuals outside of the zone who may require entry into the zone. That they are fully aware of what are the current security operations and measures being taken, and therefore can proceed according to use. In this regard, therefore, the bill proposed a fine not exceeding $1 million in the parish court and default of payment thereof, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. Madam Speaker, in clause 15, the bill seeks to introduce a new administrative process to provide for the custody and or disposal of items seized through the involvement of a justice of the peace. Currently, Madam Speaker, such circumstances are administered by an officer of the Joint Command, and this new includes and provides an appropriate separation of functions from the operational personnel. That is, when they're carrying out their duties, if goods are seized from a vendor, it is not the operational personnel who will make a decision as to what happened, but in consultation with the Justice of the Peace and Command, a civil authority, essentially. In clause 16, Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to qualify the time period in which a person arrested and detained when a zone should be taken before a Justice of the Peace or for an order to be made. The clause further proposed to increase the period of time in which the person may be remanded in custody from 24 to 48 hours, and provides for the inclusion of the term remand center in the list of places in which a person who is arrested may be detained. The recommendation to further qualify the designation of the appropriate institution for detention seeks to address circumstances contemplated in the legislation where a person is detained for having been reasonably suspected of committing an offense, but not as a consequence of a conviction. Madam Speaker, the clause further proposes the inclusion of a new subsection aimed at empowering the joint force to exercise its powers of arrest and detention outside of the bounds of the zone in cases involving hot pursuits. In these cases, Madam Speaker, a person who attempts to flee arrest in a zone could be pursued outside of the zone for the purpose of being taken into custody. It is also further proposed that a new provision reflected in clause 16A be included to establish the offense of threatening, assaulting, obstructing, or hindering a member of the joint force, and a penalty be imposed reflecting a fine not exceeding $1 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year. This particular amendment is strengthening the legislation, but essentially it allows one for an vehicle or individuals identified having committed an offense in the zone and they are being tracked by the joint force, they are allowed to track them and detain them without any limitations on how far they may go. Remembering that, remember, the joint force includes members of the Jamaica Defense Force. And in order to detain someone outside of the zone, legislators have provided to allow for that. And that's the purpose of this extension, along with, of course, we have known in one or two committees where individuals have have assaulted members of the force unnecessarily. And we wish to provide the legislative authority to penalize such individuals. Madam Speaker, in clause 17, the bill proposes to increase the time period in which a person may be held in custody without or on order from a justice of the peace from 12 to 36 hours before the prescribed officer is required to investigate the circumstances of his detention. The proposed extension, Madam Speaker, would facilitate greater operational and administrative flexibility in completing the necessary investigations that may be required in the interest of justice and sustain restoring the rule of law within the required zone. The bill proposed in clause 18 an amendment to the provision in respect of the treatment of persons arrested or detained to include, in addition to any member of the joint force who is required to facilitate the receipt of medical attention by a person in need of same, any person in charge of the supervision of any individual arrested and detained. This amendment broadens the category of person with responsibility for the care of person being held in custody arising from operations in the zone. Really means that if one requires medical attention, there must be someone in the team who can take them immediately for such attention. Madam Speaker, the clause further proposes to qualify the criteria for visitation of persons arrested or detained and permits some same in the circumstances having regard to matters of security and safety of persons. The proposed amendment seeks to balance the right to visitation with the operational risk being faced on the ground at the time. In clause 24, Madam Speaker, the bill proposed that the minister approve the terms of reference of each committee as opposed to the current language in the Act, which imposes an administrative responsibility on the minister to cause the term of reference to be prepared and transmitted to him for approval. Madam Speaker, the law forms zones of special operations, special security, and community development measures amendment Bill 2023 is the accumulation of the input from technical, policy, legal, community, and civil society groups. The proposed amendments are in the best interest of the people who reside within these vulnerable communities and volatile, and therefore in the best interest of the country, and reflects in many ways the strength of our democracy, as we not only had the Joint State Committee members commenting, making suggestions, and reviewing submissions, and submissions came from an extremely wide cross-section of society who have the basic interest of not only ensuring law and order in society, but to restore hope to the challenged communities, as we refer to the many communities where we have extensive violence beside social and environmental decay. I therefore commit this bill, Madam Speaker, to this honorable House and ask that members consider and support the proposal in the bill, and they will further strengthen the legislative toolkit that's available to combat crime, violence in our society, and restore hope to our many people living in difficult circumstances. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Oh, no, happy that I've now gotten it.
You had my eyes. I was looking particularly for the name of your constituency, member from St. Catherine South. Just to let you know, I have missed you. You may proceed. Please turn on your mic, Member Jackson.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I have to try to compose myself to respond. Madam Speaker, let me acknowledge and congratulate you on your ascension to the speakership of the House. I was out when the exercise took place. Madam Speaker, as the Minister indicated, the bill before us is not a controversial one. And to me, the process that brought this bill before us now is one that ought to be commended, ought to be applauded. And more so, the chairman, I'll say openly, he was a very good chairman in the committee. Yes, he was very facilitatory and he was very cooperative. Not always that way, I must say, Madam Chair, but in the instant case, he provided that leadership to the committee deliberations. And then we can say at this stage, that it reflected true collaborative work to get what we have. As you know, Madam Speaker, this bill, the original bill, came about in a very, how should I say, rocky way, with a number of amendments, both in this House and in the Senate before it finally came into being. This attempt is an attempt to make that bill a better bill. So it is not a perfect bill, but it represents some steps to make the situation better in light of the experiences that we have had, Madam Speaker. The minister made mention particularly of Section 18 and the insertions that make provision to treat persons who are ill or not doing well in the zones. Because while we're trying to fight crime, we must not appear to be opponents of the people and their well-being. We must be appreciative of the need to ensure that their well-being is secured in the process of bringing about order, bringing about a reduction in crime and violence. But Madam Speaker, I must say, I'm a bit disappointed that this discussion is taking place now and not over a year ago. As was indicated by the minister and is set out in the bill itself, the report came to the House in January 2022. That's over a year and a half. Bills like these, which are to deal with one of the foremost challenges facing the country, crime and violence, cannot be dealt with in this kind of way. There must be some greater sense of urgency. We have to let government function with great urgency to deal with urgent problems. And it's not problems in the abstract way. We're talking about life and death. The level of murders taking place, the level of criminality taking place in the country is, as we know it, extremely high. And when it falls in our lap as government to put in place legislative support to assist those out there, the police and the JDF, in the fight against crime and violence, we have to be more responsive. We have to move with some alacrity. Why is it that this final bill is taking over 18 months to come to this stage, not even to bring it into law yet? Still have some more leaps to take. It would be irresponsible of me not to point that out in this discussion, Madam Speaker. Not merely to criticize what have happened, but to make sure we don't repeat it. That is what is important. Madam Speaker, in the committee, the minister indicated, for example, the change in the term from intervention to transformation. There was much discussion and debate around that because all the members on both sides appreciate the importance of making sure that we seek to transform the communities rather than merely having interventions. But, Madam Speaker, that must go beyond words. That must be manifested in the programs, sustainable programs that are put in place. Many members of parliament on both sides, with the upsurge of violence, have begged the government to institute zones of special operations in their areas where you have high increases in criminal activity. So there's no hostility to the presence, but what we want is substance out of it. We have said on this side over and over, hard policing is not enough. We need social intervention to go parallel with hard policing. That's why we have supported the zones of special operations and have emphasized the need for social intervention, adequate social intervention and sustainable social intervention, because we must transform communities so that we can have a transformed country. And it's not going to happen overnight. It means that we must put in place the human capacities, the social workers, who don't show up in a big ceremony and then after that nothing happens, that they are there on the ground. And the truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, we have enough experiences in this country to tell us that for social transformation, you need a strong cadre of social workers. The SDC, for example, they don't really have the capacity to do the kind of social intervention that is needed. They don't have the resources. They don't have the monetary allocation to recruit and maintain the human capital that is needed for that intervention. So I'm making this plea, Madam Speaker, that while we have full agreement, a convergence around these modifications, because that's what this bill is a modification of what we had before. While we converge in doing that, let us recommit ourselves not only in words, but in the allocation of the resources that can make this bill achieve some of the things that it set out to achieve at the outset. Madam Speaker, we must not talk, when we talk about the bill phase must not be about the physical building. It must be about the social infrastructure building. That's the kind of building we want to see take place in the bill phase of the ZOSOs. So, as I said, the opposition is in full support of the bill before us. We just urge that we make the provision in this meaningful without undue delay. Jamaica begs us to do that with some urgency. We must respond. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We'll now acknowledge the member from St. Andrews Southwest.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise, let me also add my own words of commendation to you assuming the chair. We had a conversation while we were testing the mic a few days ago, and I hope you will remember some of the commitments you made while you were not speaker then, because I'm hoping to see you do them in the chair. You're a witness. There you go. There you go. Madam Speaker, I really wanted to speak, and not for very long. I wanted to give my commendation to the chairman of the committee and the members who served. And I am pleased today to see the changes. We would have read them in the reports when it was tabled. But particularly, I wanted to single out the collaboration that has led us to this. And I do so particularly because, Madam Speaker, over the last couple of years, every time a member of the opposition would have noted something that we were not pleased with, there were others, I won't name where they were from, but there were others who pointed to the fact that we were not committed to actually dealing with the issue of crime and violence. And I believe that the approach taken by the committee in working on the amendments and getting us to this stage proves that to be a lie. And it is obviously clear that we all have the same goal. So I'm very pleased for that, and I believe it's a signal to the rest of Jamaica, and we can stop pretending that we are on different sides of this issue of crime and violence, which is so important to us in Jamaica in terms of stemming that. So that's one. The other that I sat there listening, Madam Speaker, and it is a thought that I've had as we have been discussing it every time, is how do we measure success? And it is good to actually hear the reports, see the money that is spent, talk about the activities. But again, as we are saying, we're looking at transformation. And when I read even the reports, I don't get a sense that we are clear as to what will constitute success in these ZOZOs and over the time. I know that it is difficult to set a time, but I think it would be important to at least identify what are those indicators that would say to us that we are in fact making progress and that we are having success. And lastly, I just want to echo that yes, we want to make sure that there are some physical changes. Yes, we want to make sure that there is that interaction, the committee that is established, discussion that is ongoing. But I believe it is also extremely important to make sure as we look for changes in communities, we look for changes in people's lives and the members who make up the society coming from these communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Honorable Minister. Member from St. Andrew Western.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too want to congratulate you on your elevation to the Speaker's chair, and I am heartened by the way in which we have begun this session, and I urge you to show the same equanimity and balance in your chair, the chairmanship. So we look forward to it. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the minister and the committee for the work. The minister would have known that from the onset, I have been one to call for this kind of balance in the fight against crime and violence. And that it was not just the hard policing that was critical, but that this aspect of the work was very critical to the success of the fight. And so I'm very pleased today to see that the amendments are before us. And I'm paying particular attention to sections 23 and 24 of the act that is being amended with the introduction of the social intervention committee. And Madam Speaker, I think that work is critical. The minister also mentioned that the fact is that those communities that have not been declared zones of special operation, but that the Planning Institute over the years have identified as communities with particular challenges, that the work towards those committees continue, the assessments continue, and the interventions continue to preempt some of what can be. We know there are challenges, and we've seen some of them, the minister and I, certainly in parts of my constituency, New Haven in particular, where we have gone to deal with aspects of the situation there, we see situation that with some proactive steps, some things might have been avoided, and really some, you know, really some difficult situation might have been avoided. And so I say to the minister that I look forward very much to the fact that the committee will look at some of those situations and begin to address those situations. But I think, Minister, that with this balanced approach, I think you will see that you'll get a more fulsome support for the activities of the forces, the command, both the police and the military in their operation, because we believe now there is the possibility for this balanced approach that I believe will make the fight a more effective fight. So thank you, Minister, and we look forward to its implementation, the monitoring, and the evaluation as we go along. Thank you.
Minister of National Security.
That's not a nice. No, the impact of the new speaker is being felt. All contribute. Madam Speaker, in closing this step, we thus thank the members who have contributed for their support and in this debate and the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Bill 2023. Just to reassure the members, the expansion to other areas will take place, not as rapidly as they would like or I would like. I'd like to have moved into a large number of those spaces for many, many reasons, maybe 30, 40 at a time, but the current bodies haven't quite allowed it, but we'll be getting there, and we have in fact begun to move some of the programs under the part of the program which are now being funded through a different mechanism, because the need, as the member from Southwest Central points out, to keep accurate data and monitoring and evaluation of programs on an ongoing real-time basis is beginning to take place through the Citizen Business Council, which is the head of all government agencies involved, permanent secretaries, relevant statutory bodies, and there's a secretariat that does provide a quarterly report and specific activities, including social activities, social, not hardcore activities of the infrastructure type, family issues, educational issues, counseling, as we go through the coming healthcare and things like registration, which is legitimizing identity, all the program that goes in through the Ministry of Social Security. In fact, in one committee, I've done a database to identify on the population, to identify all the required needs at all levels. So the next time you look, we look at the PATH program, for example, we'll see that all the people should be there, not just those who have come out or who have been identified on, will be on the program by virtue of a very empirically, statistically based approach. And we hope to take this across the island. Because indeed, Madam Speaker, the fact is that PATH currently hosts nearly 400,000 individuals. There may be, if you fine-tune it, there may be not more than 20,000 people who are not justified on it, and they may only have about 40,000 outside who should be on it. But those 40,000 tend to be at the very bottom of the ladder, and the objective is to catch all that is required. The program was funded, and the government of Jamaica, and in association with the European Union, the approach is to go through the budget support rather than through large projects which had their place. But one of the challenges you have with projects is that a significant amount of them will go off into consultancies and reviews rather than strengthening the agencies of government that do the actual work, whether it is the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the PIOJ, the SDC, and